All right, everyone. Hello. Welcome back to Dan's Astrology. Today is the 6th of March, 2026. And today we have a triple conjunction of Venus, Neptune, and Saturn in Aries. And I was thinking about all the stuff that's been happening recently and how this goes with the astrology. And the most obvious thing that has just happened is that Donald Trump has fired Kristi Noem from the position of the director of Homeland Security and is replacing her with some guy named Mark Mullen. Although I'm not a political pundit, but there is something about if you think about what Neptune stands for. I was going through my Liz Green book on Neptune, and I had kind of left off after in this part of the book where she's talking a lot about glamour and stuff. And there's something about the glamorization of the spectacle, or the strange kind of like TikTok culture. Like here, look, I mean, I am a Canadian, and here in Canada, in Vancouver, where I live, there have been protests protesting these social media. There's some sort of company called Hootsuite that has been helping out ICE or whatever with social media accounts, and there's been this huge social media spectacle where it's not just a war around in the traditional sense, but a war of images, a war and a kind of a propaganda machine, and that's even being outsourced to our own Canadian media industry is playing a role in this. And it could be in a moment where is an interesting change of pace, seeing that with Venus having spent all this time in Pisces, now Venus is in Aries in this confrontation with this Neptune and Saturn. Saturn often having to do, obviously, with limits, boundaries, barriers. And here we see Kristi Noem reaching the limit or the boundary of her career in that spectacle, the kind of glamour spectacle position of, social media commander in chief of Homeland Security or whatever it is, right? So one of the things that we can see here is how this is being set off in Kristi Noem's chart, and aside from having Chiron in Aries, she doesn't have much Aries going on. I should also say that we don't have a birth time for Kristi Noem, so don't worry about the house placement. We've got her on this inner wheel. If you look at her chart, she's got a Sagittarius stellium. I also have a Sagittarius stellium, so I can recognize, from one Sag to another, there's a certain kind of zealotry, like a woman on a crusade or something. She's on her own kind of holy mission or something with Neptune and Sagittarius, Jupiter and Sagittarius, during the time when it was a very Jupiter time. We've got Jupiter in Cancer right now, transiting. The So she's got a lot of Sag. She's got a moon in Taurus, which has obviously been activated by the Taurus Uranus transits, radicalizing her, right? But if we look at this, the topic for today is this Venus ingress into Aries, and it's just interesting to me that this has set off her natal Pluto placement in the early degrees of Libra, right? Which is very coincidentally, it was the Ronald Reagan Saturn Neptune, or the Saturn Jupiter grand conjunctions in Libra that in the 80s with neoliberalism, and a lot of people are saying that this historical moment is marking the end of neoliberalism, or the sort of order that was put in by the 80s with Reagan and stuff. And Pluto kind of stands for the underworld, the corruption, the what has died and passed away, being haunted by the ghosts of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, and it's perhaps finally a door to, put the stake through the vampire's heart and shut the coffin, and we're entering a kind of a new phase here, basically, right? The Pluto also has a lot to do with fascism, as it was a planet that was discovered during the 1930s, when fascism was first getting popular, right? So basically, we have the fascist spectacle, of which Kristi Noem has been a frontline star, and now with the Saturn Neptune conjunction and Venus coming in there, we see a woman falling from a position of her exaltation into her fall, a place of detriment in Aries, an uncomfortable position, hitting the wall, the obstacle designated by Saturn, and perhaps a shift around the glamorization of the fascist political regime. This is just a quickie, and I also would also just like to. It's also interesting to note that Kristi Noem is a fellow Mars in Pisces, due to have a Mars return soon in the aftermath of the eclipse season. Thanks for watching. My name's Dan. This is Dan's Astrology. Happy 2026. Hang on, buckle up. We'll see you next time for more.